Can everyone hear me? Raise your hands in the back if you can. Thank you for that very nice introduction. Winslow, I had no idea what you would say, but since we've known each other for years, anything is possible. In preparing for this talk, I also looked over my list of 400 plus publications, and I was impressed. And what impressed me most is that dealing with scientific unknowns and finding partial or complete answers to scientific problems is very exciting and very satisfying. And I couldn't have picked a better career. In today's talk, I plan to describe what I consider some of our most important contributions. And I'll begin my talk with a brief history. I'll explain something about when and where I became interested in science, and when I decided to that becoming a scientist would be just right for me. I grew up in New York City, in the Bronx, and when I was in junior high school, the Bronx High School of Science came into existence, and that was a 20-minute walk across town. And this looked very interesting, exciting, and I played a little bit with living things, and so I thought maybe science will be interesting. And so I applied for admission to Bronx High School of Science, and I was admitted in the second or third year of its existence. And I attended the Bronx High School of Science from 1940 to 1942. This is a cover of a term report that I prepared because it indicates why I became a scientist. We didn't know it as students, but the faculty, the teachers in the Bronx High School of Science were determined to have all their students become scientists. And what they did to get us involved in science was to give us an opportunity for hands-on experience. And I was a member of a so-called Drosophila squad, where everything was provided. I could perform, and I did perform, crosses between Drosophila mutants. And I also had microscopes, and I could stain salivary chromosomes and see these big chromosomes. And that hands-on experience, I think, is what convinced each of us to become scientists. I was into photography at the time, and I photographed large salivary chromosomes. And this poster, this report, I don't know whether it's clear, but I took pictures of the salivary chromosomes, cut out the chromosomes, and the Cinderella based on that. And I did this report with a fellow student. So upon graduating from Bronx High School of Science, my parents couldn't afford to send me to private college. My older brother and sister both went to private colleges, but this was a bad time economically. So I applied to go to City College of New York, where the tuition was $1 a year. They claimed it was non-tuition free, but it's not true. It's $1 a year. And I attended 42 to 44 and 46 to 48. Why the gap? World War II. I was drafted, and I drafted into the infantry. I served in the 75th Infantry Division in a cannon company, and our division went to Europe. After some time in France, our division was thrown into a fight in the Battle of the Bulge. And I aimed and fired a 105 howitzer, and this is a picture in the field of the howitzer and the shells that we fired. And I fought in the Battle of the Bulge for about a month. Now, it was very cold in Belgium in December at the time, and we lived in foxholes, and we were not equipped for cold weather. So about 50% of the members of my division got frostbite, myself included. And so at one point, I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand, my legs were numb, and they kept shipping me back from hospital to hospital, and I ended up spending a month in bed in a hospital in Britain for being treated for frostbite, and they treated us by having us drink tea twice a day. But in any event, after a month in a hospital, I went to a convalescent hospital, and I recovered from the frostbite. And after 3 months in the convalescent hospital, I was returned to my infantry division. And oddly enough, I returned to my division on the English Channel the day the war in Europe ended. Which was very fortunate. And then I spent 2 months in Germany, occupying the city, and then my division was assigned to occupy the redeployment camps. The soldiers would go back to the United States for discharge, and I operated an army switchboard in a redeployment camp near Rheims in France. Now, while I didn't have enough years of service to get out of the army quickly, so I had to serve in this redeployment camp, but I was entitled to furloughs, and I did take one furlough that I remember. In November 1945, I visited the Pasteur Institute in Paris, and there's a picture of me in front of the Pasteur Institute, and that renewed my interest in science. But eventually I returned to City College in New York, and I decided, like most ex-soldiers, got to be committed to something. So I was very aggressive in deciding what to do. And I had decided that, yes, I did want to become a scientist. And I was a biochemistry major at City College. And my reading, what impressed me most was the work of Beadle and Tatum. And they had postulated the one gene, one enzyme hypothesis. And I read all of their publications, and I gave a seminar, as I recall, on their contributions in one of the courses that I took. And I decided what they did was just right for me, and I decided to go to graduate school, and I applied to do my graduate school with Beadle and with Tatum. Now, Beadle and Tatum had done their exceptional work at Stanford in the biology department at Jordan Hall. And but Beadle, at the time I was applying to graduate school, Beadle had gone to Caltech as chairman of biology, and Tatum had been at Yale. So I applied to Caltech and Yale. I was turned down by Caltech. I didn't know that Beadle was chairman, no longer accepting graduate students, but I was accepted at by Tatum at Yale. So I went to graduate school at Yale. When I arrived at Yale, I discovered that Tatum had decided to leave Yale and return because Stanford had offered him a position again. So he went back to Stanford, and I did my graduate work with Dave Bonner. Dave Bonner had worked with Beadle and Tatum at Stanford, and then he moved with Tatum to Yale. And this is one of my favorite pictures. This is a picture taken at the Cold Spring Harvest Symposium, and these are all very prominent geneticists. Lou Stadler, of course, known to all of you, he put maize on the map, and Carl Lindgren, Norm Giles, and Don Poulsen, who I got to know reasonably well, also were prominent geneticists. So I was a biochemistry major predominantly at City College, and when I joined Dave Bonner's group, he thought that it would be best to give me something that was a biochemical problem.